Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Welcome to Dev with Excel. Alright, so in this video we are going to be solving exercise 2.18 of the data for countries. So let's read the instruction. Alright, so previously we solved exercise 2.17, which is this, and we were able to fix the aspect whereby when a user is deleted in a particular browser and then its number is to be edited in another browser, we don't get a notification on the front end, right? But it doesn't work in the back end. So we try to send a notification to the front end or to the user telling the person what exactly is wrong. All right, so in this video we are going to be solving exercise 2.18, and this is a new exercise. It says data for countries step 1. All right, so here we are going to be dealing with APIs, right? Okay, so let's read what it says. It says at this endpoint here, which takes us to an API, you can find a service that offers a lot of information related to different countries in a so-called machine readable format via the REST API. Make an application that allows you to view information from different countries. The user interface is very simple. The country to be shown is found by typing a search query into the search field. If there are too many countries, as if the countries that are returned are over 10 countries that match the query, then the user is prompted to make their query more specific. All right, so I think we should start with this. Now let's start with this part, right? So let's go to the code implementation first and see what we can do. All right, so I've created the setup folder, which is data countries here. Step 1. All right, so going to the SRC, I think we are not concerned with the main.jsx, but rather we are concerned with the app.jsx. So this is what we'll be working with. Okay, so for now, this is what we have in our code. So when we try to run it, when we try to run the React app, it doesn't run anything, right? Okay, so what we can do is, let's first of all, let's copy this part. That's a step 1. And let's seed into it. Then let's run the front end. All right, so at the moment when we refresh this page, we don't tend to get anything in our screen, right? Because we need to code. All right, so what we want to do next is we want to do two things. We are going to be setting the state for the app component, and also we are going to be creating the input buttons, right? The input, right, for whereby we are going to be typing in the countries, right? Okay, so let's just do this. Let's minimize this, and then also let's do the same here. All right, so here what we can do is we simply say const app is equal to this, right? So here we are going to be writing our state. So we are going to be writing the country state. We say countries and then set countries. Wrong spelling. Set countries. Then we assign this to an empty array. Now this is going to handle the countries we are going to be searching, right, through the search query. Then also we want to write or create another state which we call search item. Now this search item here is going to help us to search for the items through the input query, right? That's a search query. So here we say set search item. Here we set this to be equal to an empty string, I think. All right, so I think we can just stop this for now. I'm not sure we are going to be working with any props here. All right, so let's see what we can return. Let's do something like this. And then inside of this return statement, so let's write a div. All right, so inside this div, what we need to write is we need to create this search query input, right? So before we can do that, let's first of all write a title to this search query. Let's call it country information app with the h1 tag. So we do something like this: country information app. So let's save this and see if anything comes up on the screen. All right, so we have country information app here, right? So the next thing we want to do is we want to write the input that is going to come underneath it, right? Whereby we can type in the countries we want to return. All right, so what we can do is coming down to the next line, we say um, let's type in label, and then inside the label, let's write search for a country. Then we can put something like this. Let's save this. Okay, so we have this search for a country. All right, so gradually our app is coming up, right? The next thing we want to do is we want to create the input here where we can type in the country. So we say input, and then inside the input, we want to give it a we are going to give it some attributes, right? So the first attribute we want to give it is the type. So we are trying to say that the type is going to get text. Then the next one we want to give it is a value. Now this value we want to give it is going to be the search item here. So we are going to copy this and then place it here. That means that anything we type inside, let's save this first. So anything we type inside this input refers to this search item. But for now, it's still an empty string. So that's what it means. All right, so the next thing we want to type inside, the next attribute we want to give our inputs is, I think we should give it an unchanged. Yes, it's very important we give it an unchanged. Okay, so for the unchanged, what we can do is the unchanged is going to be more or less like a function, right? We've been doing this before now. So we call it E, or we can just call it event, whichever that pleases you. You can choose to call it any other thing. Then we set it to set search item. Let's copy this and then let's paste this here. And then this is going to target the value here inside the input here, right? So we are simply going to say E dot target dot value. This is going to be the unchanged, right? All right, I think for now we've been able to do a few things. So the next thing we want to do is let's go back to the instruction. Let's scroll up. So the first one says if there are too many countries, that's over 10 countries that match the query, then the user is prompted to make their query more specific. So if we, okay, so just like now, we know that a lot of countries start with or have U inside them. When we type U here, you know that that's going to return so many countries, right? So instead of it to return so many countries, it's simply going to tell us that too many matches, specify another filter, right? So that's what we are going to be working on next. So after the label tag, what we can do is we are going to be using this curly brace, and inside of this we are going to be handling this part of the instruction. That's for the over 10 countries, right? So we are going to be calling out these country states now. We say countries, right, dot length greater than 10. So this is trying to say if the number of countries that are returned if they are more than 10, right? That's over 10 as it's specified here, then something should happen. What should happen? We can just do something like this, and right? So this is another way to also work it out. So we can just say and then the round brackets. So we say inside the round bracket here, let's give it a p tag, and then let's say please say something like too many matches, specify another filter. But in our case, we are working with countries, right? So let's say too many countries. Please make your entry specific. Or we could just say, please make your query specific, right? So that's that. So we have this. So we have this now. So let's try to put in something like you. Okay, so this is currently not going to work until we begin to work with the API, right? So there's a mistake here, please. Okay. All right. So the next thing we want to consider is at this point we need to work with the API, right? We need to work with the API. So we've already imported axios and the use effect. So now let's try and see if we can begin to use the use effect, right? So we are going to be using that outside the return. For the use effect, we use it outside the return. So let's type it, use effect. Now this is going to accept a function, and then we do something like this. Now what we can do is we are going to say const. Let's call this, we want to create a function here. Let's call it fetch data, or let's say fetch country, right? So we can call it fetch data, we can call it fetch country. But I think it is still okay to be specific since we are dealing with countries. We say fetch countries, right? So now to handle errors, right? Let's use a try catch block just in case we have errors coming up, right? So let's handle the error first. To handle the error, we could simply just say console error. Then inside the brackets, we can just say error fetching data. So this is going to, okay, so all right, so let's save this, and maybe we could just, after this error fetching data, we could just say error dot data, or we could just say error, right? It depends on what you want to work with specifically. All right, now let's write the code to handle the API. So let's say const API, or we can just call it URL, whichever that pleases you anyway. Then let's do something like this. Let's say backtick. Let's write some URL. Okay, so having written this, what we want to do next is let's see how we can actually use this, right? So let's use the axios next. So for the axios, it's going to be an await because this function is supposed to be an async. It's an asynchronous operation. So we are going to be saying await axios dot get. Now we are working with a get because we want to get the data, right? Now what do we want to get? We want to get this URL, right? We want to get this URL. Or should we just call it API? Okay, let's leave it as URL, right? Okay, so let's save this. So let's assign this line of code to a variable, right? So let's call the variable, what should we call it? Let's call it response. Let's just call it response. So after that, we want to console log the data in the response. So we say response dot data. Then after doing that also, we now want to set the response dot data, right, as the country, as the updated country that we search for to be rendered on the screen, right? So we are simply going to say set countries, something like this. Then we are going to pass in what the response.data. All right. So since we are able to use or to call this function, let's call this function. We are going to call it immediately after. I think immediately after this part should work. Before then, let's understand that useEffect is supposed to have a second parameter, right? So it depends on what we are working on. It's going to be an empty array, or we are going to be having some values in the array. Before then, let's just call this fetch data here. So let's call it this way, fetch country rather. Okay, so let's take it to the next line. All right. So now we need to put in a value here, right? Because we are supposed to put in this search item value inside this array because we are going to be searching for different countries. So we want this to the use effect to render as many as possible changes that are happening in the application. So we just copy this search item. We could have even called this search country, but it's fine calling it search item. So let's paste this, right? So let's save this. Now we can see that we are having too many countries. Please make your entry specific. Let's refresh this. Let's type U. Now, even without typing anything yet, we are having we are having this displayed already, right? So we can handle this in a way. How can we handle this? That if we've not typed anything, right, this should not be showing. That means when this part is empty, we don't want anything to be shown here. So this is how we can actually solve that. Still inside this use effect, let's use a conditional statement. Let's say if the search item which represent this input here, so we say search item dot string is a method, right? So if this is equal to an empty string, right, that means there's nothing inside of this part. What do we want to do? We are simply going to set the countries to an empty array. So we copy this and we paste it here and we give it an empty array, right? Then we return. Let's save this and see if this works. Okay, so we've been able to handle that. But when we type in a letter that seems to be present in in more than 10 countries, then we begin to have too many countries. Let's see if we can type in more to see if it goes in. Okay, this will not work yet because we are yet to put in the API, right? Okay, all right. Let's just call this API URL. Okay, let's leave it that way. Let's not complicate things, right? If the code works successfully, then we can begin to refactor some parts of this code. But for now, I think let's not get ahead of ourselves. All right. Going to the first instruction, which says if there are too many or over 10 countries that match the query, then user is prompted to make their query more specific. Now, we've implemented this, but we can't see it work. We can't see its real work yet because we need to have some API working here. All right, so let's go to the instruction again. Let's see how to deliver this. In the instruction here, we've been given this as the API. Let's open this in a new link, in a new tag rather. So we have the API.all. This gives us all the countries, right? But I don't think we want to work with this. Let's work with the one that is specific for a country. So let's click on this. Let's take it back. Let's open it in a new tab, right? Okay, so we have this, right? We have the name. Here we have name for Finland. So this is giving us the data, right, for Finland. This is the API data given for Finland, right? But in our own case, we want to make it in a way that we can choose whatever country we want to work with, right? So let's see what we can do. Let's copy this. So we are going to be using this as the API, and then let's go back to the code implementation. So we replace this some URL with this. So we have this. Now let's refresh this part and then let's try to type in Nigeria. Okay, so this does not work. Okay, so I actually found out that this link doesn't work directly, right? We may need to do some, may need to specify the API version used in this link. Then how do we do that? I simply just went to, I copied this rest countries. I went to restcountries.com, right? So let's go to restcountries.com. Let's duplicate this tab and go to restcountries.com. Let me simply just take out this part and then take out this part and say .com. Let's see what we get. Okay, so here we can see that we are currently on restcountries.com and it says that the current version we are working on is 3.1. So let's see how we can work with when we want to target just a country, right? So let's look for the name of the country. So here we can see that we have name here which says search by country name. If you want to get an exact match, use the next endpoint. It can be the common or official value. So we are going to be using something like this, right? So let's copy this and then let's go to the code implementation. Let's paste it here. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we are going to remove these parts. We don't need these parts per se. So we are working with https restcountries.com slash v3.1. Okay, I think we need that part, that name, yes. All right, so here we take out, we simply put a dollar sign here. And then here we are not, we don't have name in this project. We don't have name as a variable, right? Instead, we have search item. So this search item is going to represent the country we'll be searching, right? So we are simply working with this. So let's go back to the front end and then let's refresh. So let's type in U to see. Okay, now we can see that this is working well because here we typed in U and it understands that there are so many countries that contain U as a letter in them. So it's saying too many countries. Please make your entry specific, right? Now let's try to type in a country such as Nigeria because I'm currently in Nigeria. Okay, so this is currently not working. Why is that so? Okay, so let's go to the developers to see exactly what's wrong. Let's close this. Let's refresh. Let's type in Nigeria again. Okay, so this is the information for Nigeria, right? So it's giving us the alternate spellings, the area, the borders, the capital, which is Abuja. All right, so what is happening here is that this is working fine, but we've not been able to implement it on the front end, right? Because here we've only said that if the countries that are returned are more than 10, we should simply say too many countries. Please make your entry specific. All right, so let's go back to the instruction to see how we can do that. I think that's the next one we want to work on right now. So we've been able to work this right. Now the next one, it says if there are 10 or fewer countries but more than one, then all countries matching the query are shown. Something like this. all countries matching the query are shown. All right, so that's what we want to work on. So let's come underneath this part here. So the next thing we can do is let's write the code logic that is going to handle 10 or fewer countries, but more than one. So let's put this curly braces here and then let's call countries, right? Now, there's something we need to understand. But before then, let's write countries dot length and then less than or equal to 10. That means it's less than or equal to 10, right? Then let's use and. Then also we want to target countries dot length that are greater than 1 because here it says but more than 1, right? Okay, so what do we need to do next? What we can do next is we can still use the and operator, right? And then we say and then put a round bracket. Now inside this round bracket, we are going to be handling the front end that is going to help us to show the countries that are returned the way we saw it in the console here. So the way it is in the console here, we want the necessary informations we need to be returned here also. So when we type in a country such as Niger, because we understand that there's Niger, there's also Nigeria, right? We are going to be getting a list of countries that have Niger in them, right? Such as Niger itself and Nigeria itself, right? So that's what we want to do right now. Okay. All right, so let's go to the code implementation again and let's solve that. So inside the round bracket, what we can do here is we are going to start with a div. We say div. Um, let's close it here. So inside this div, there's something we need to put. Let's first of all, let's close this part. So here, let's put a text that says matching countries, right? So the countries that match the input we gave. So we can put that in an H2 tag. So we just say matching countries. Let's put a colon. So here we have matching countries here, right? Then as a list, we need to return the countries that match the query, right? So we are going to use a UL. UL is referred to as an unordered list. So we have two types of list, the unordered list and the ordered list. Here I want to work with the unordered list, and then the unordered list is going to return the, so we say countries dot map. Here we are just trying to iterate through the countries that are going to fit the match, right? That are going to fit the query. So we say country, which is a parameter we gave it. You can choose to call it something else. It doesn't have to be country itself. So you can choose to use an explicit return or an implicit return. So here I'm simply going to use a round brackets as an implicit return, right? So let's use the li. We say li, which represent the list, because for every ul or ol there should be an li nested inside of it. I hope that is clear. Now we are trying to target the name of the country. Now when we come back to the API here, we can see that to access this name is going to be name.common, right? Name.common. And then before we can get name itself, it has to be countries.name.common. Why is that so? It's so because this part here we have countries as a state already. So it's going to be countries dot something like this. Countries dot name dot common. Okay, so this is giving us an underline. It's a missing key property for element. Okay, so let's give it a key. So the key we are going to be giving it is this same value, and the key is to be written inside this li. So we say key equals, let's paste this. Okay, so let's close one of these curly braces. All right, so now we have this here, but currently we don't know what to make out of it, right? So this is complaint that the country here has not been used. We need to use this as a country. Okay, so how do we solve that? Um, okay, sorry, my mistake. Since we are looping through the countries, right, and this is the value that we are going to be using for each of the loops, this is not supposed to be countries. This also is not supposed to be countries. It's supposed to be country. So let's copy this country. Let's paste it here, and also let's paste it here. All right, so let's save this. Let's go to the front end. Let's refresh this. Oh, something is wrong. We are supposed to have matching countries, right? So, all right. So, okay. So I think it's when we find matching countries, right, that this text also gets returned. Let's try it and see. Let's type in Niger. All right. So just NIG. Okay. So this is giving us Belgium. No. So let's type NIGER. All right, so we can see we have Nigeria, we also have Niger, right? So I think our code is gradually making some sense. Let's give this H3, not H2 now, so that it can be smaller. But we actually don't use the H1 to H6 tags to size our text. No, that's a very wrong use of it. But in this case, I'm just going to be using that, right? Pardon me. Okay, all right. So we've been able to solve this second part. No, sorry, this second part here, right? Now let's solve this third part, and I think this third part is going to be the last for this exercise. So it says when there is only one country matching the query, then the basic data of the country, e.g. capital and area, its flag and the languages spoken are shown. So when we solve this, let's target the capital, the area, the flag and the languages spoken. Though we can still work on more of the basic data, but I think let's just work with this four. Then on your own, you can choose to add more data returned to the front end. All right, so let's go back to the front end. Okay, so here we are going to be doing that next. So to do this, we want, if you look at this part now, when we type in just, when we have a particular name of a country that is specific, right? Such as this country, Nigeria, right? We are expected to have its basic data, such as the capital, the area, the flag, and the languages returned. So that's exactly what we want to do next now. So let's begin. So we are going to use this curly brace again. It's very important because this is React, right? So when it comes to React, React does not happen except without curly braces, if you ask me. Okay, so let's say countries dot length is one. So here we want to target when we have just one returned country, right? So we simply just say and. This is what we've been using since. So we've been using and. So here we can actually use an if statement. So we can just say if countries.length is equal to 1, then inside the if statement, we write the code we want to write here. Or we can just say and. It works the same way. So here also, you can just, instead of you putting this double and pass and here, we could just put this from here to here inside an if statement. And then this part here should be inside the if statement block, right? The logic itself. All right, so I'm going to go ahead with using this and with the round brackets. I think I'm beginning to love it actually. All right, so let's call the div and then let's close the div. I don't know why this div does want to close for me. All right, so we do something like this, right? And inside this div, we are going to be writing a lot of things, right? So let's target the name of the country. So to target the name of the country, here, don't forget, we are not going to be looping here because we'll be having something like this. Let's write an h3 tag, and then let's, inside the h3 tag, we are still going to write the curly brace, and then say countries, which is a state, right? Countries, which is a state. Here we are not looping, right? So we are going to be calling the first array, the first item in the array. Now, coming back to the API here, we can see that here we have an array. Okay, so it's believed that this is an array of countries, right? When we use the rest countries, um, let's go to restcountries.com. Okay, yes, restcountries.com. We have it here already. So these values here, we know it's in an array, right? It's in an array form, because when we go to API/all, let's go to API/all. We can see that here is an array, right? So to target one country, we have to target the array in which it belongs. All right, so let's go back to the front end. Then we say countries square bracket 0, right? That means we are targeting the country which want to type the country passed into the query, right? So the next thing we want to do is want to target the name of that country, and also we want to target the common. Here the common is an object that refers to the name, because when you look at this part here, we can see that here Finland is a value to this common property, right? So to get this common, it has to be name.common, right? That's why we have here name.common. I believe this is making sense gradually. So let's save this and see what we have. So here we have Nigeria because we passed in Nigeria here, right? If we pass in a country such as, let's look for another African country, let's say Togo. So here we have Togo. So when we also try Ghana, here we have Ghana, right? So for every country that we pass in, gets returned. All right. So the next thing we want to do is we are going to be targeting the capital, right? So here we said we want to target a few things. Here's instruction. Here we want to target the capital, the area. So let's go to the capital. Let's target the capital. So we say something like this, and then inside here we write capital as a text, right? Then curly brace, we do something like this. We say countries square bracket 0 dot capital, because looking at the API, to get the capital, where do we have the capital? Yes, the capital is here, right? We have to target the countries and then straight to the capital, right? Not the name this time, but the capital. So that's why we have countries square bracket 0 dot capital. All right, so let's save this and see. Let's type in Nigeria once again. So here we have Nigeria. We also have the capital, Abuja. All right, so the next thing we want to target is, I think, what's that you want to target? The area. All right, so going to the API again. Where do we get the area? The area is somewhere. Let's search for it. Let's search for it. Very important. Yes, area. Right? So we are simply going to be saying we can just copy and paste this. So we do something like this, and then we change capital to area, and then instead of capital here, we simply just write area, right? So I think this should make sense. So let's save this Let's check the front end. Okay, so we have area of 923,768. All right, so this is working fine. So the next we want to target also is the flag and the languages. Let's target the languages first. um to target the languages, let's come here, let's use the p tag again, and let's say languages, or language rather. Well, it could be languages, it could be language, because a particular country can actually speak more than one language. So let's call it languages. Let's save this. Now, what we need to do is, there's something we need to do, right? Quickly. Now, the languages here, I think some of them, let's be sure. Where is languages? Languages here. All right. So here we can see that this part, it contains objects, right? The languages, its value is an object, right? So what we can do here is we can just come somewhere above here, and then let's define that before the return statement. Let's define the languages such that if it's an array, we are not going to be having an issue, or if it's an object, we also won't be having issues. So we can just say const. So here we simply want to create a function that helps us to render the language, right? Okay, so language. All right, so what this does is it helps us to properly render the language. That's what it does. And this accepts a parameter called language, or languages in this case. All right, so the code logic is going to be, if it's an array, we are trying to check if it's an array. So we say array dot is array languages. We need to do something. We need to say, I hope my syntax is okay. All right, so we need to return languages and then say dot join. So we all understand what join does, right? Join is more like the opposite of splitting. So I don't think I should go too further in that. So we say else, not else now, let's use else if, because we are going to be testing some other conditions as well. So we say else if, what do we say? Let's check the type of language if it's an object. So we say type of languages. Let's check if it's an object. So we simply just do something like this. If it is, we need to do something. Let's return object dot values. Then inside the values, we pass in languages, right? Then use dot join. Then we say comma and then put a space there. Let's save this. All right. So after this, let's use the else statement to wrap it up. So we want to test for something else. We simply just return unknown as a string. Let's call it unknown. That's depending on the API we are working with. If the returned languages, if they are objects, or that if they are arrays, we've already written a function that is going to help us to handle that. So we won't be running into issues if the data is an array or object, right? So we are going to be using this render language inside this code implementation for languages. All right, so what we want to do for languages is just as we did for the rest of them, we are going to be putting a curly brace, and then we say countries dots, or first of all countries square bracket 0, because we are targeting the first item, right? Then we say languages, right? And then we say double ampersand. Then we use the render language, which accepts a parameter language. But in this case, the language it's going to accept is going to be this. So we copy this and then we paste it here, right? So let's save this and see if our code is making sense. Let's go to the front end. Okay, here, so we have English, right? So when you check the API, you will see that um let's check the console log. Let's check the developers too. Let's see what we have for languages in Nigeria. So Nigeria, let's look for languages. Okay, all right, here, so we can see we have English, right? But Nigeria also okay, so when they say English for the language, that's because the lingua franca is English, right? But in Nigeria, we still speak so many other languages, right? We have up to 3 tribes in Nigeria, and also we have so many ethnic groups in Nigeria, right? So many languages are being spoken in Nigeria, right? But officially we use English in Nigeria. All right, so that's that. So going to the next item, what do we need to work on next? Let's go to the instruction to see what we can work on next. Okay, flag. Let's see how we can work with the flag so that we'll be having something like this. Here, this is Switzerland, right? This is the flag. We can see that they speak French, Swiss German, Italian, and Romania, right? All right, so let's work on the flag. So underneath this part, we are still going to use a curly brace, right? Like I said, there's no okay, no, not here, sorry. I think it's going to be after this p tag, yes. Okay, so here, let's use a p tag. Uh, okay, so I'm simply going to be continuing from here on the next video, in the next video rather. So till then, have a nice time and see you in the next video. Bye.